Live. All right, thank you. Hi, welcome to Fascination Film Festival, day 2. We have our amazing panel today with some fantastic panelists for the Careers in Film panel. I'm going to start things off with a little land acknowledgement. And we are gathered here today in Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory, home of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Dakota, Dene, and Ojibwe nations, and the heartland of the Métis people. We are also tonight streaming to a venue in Calgary at the Calgary Public Library, Central Library, which is Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta, the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Itskaya, Nakota, Tsuut'ina, and the Métis Nation of Region 3. Finally, this festival is also occurring on the internet, the infrastructure which is spread out like a web all across Turtle Island, and connecting all of us who live, work, and play on these lands. This gathering allows us not to only celebrate that which we are here to celebrate, the contributions of those with Asian heritage in these lands, but also to recognize and acknowledge the Indigenous people in a spirit of reconciliation. I also want to thank, before we start, Film Training Manitoba for sponsoring this panel, and we're going to have a little welcome from its managing director, Adam Smolik.
Hi everyone, I'm Adam Smolik, as Alan just said, and I do want to just take a few moments to thank Fascination for organizing this world-class event and having Canadians and people from all around the world participating. The panelists that you're going to see today are people that are very familiar with being working professionals within the film and television industry. I don't know Jesse as well, but I certainly know Diana, Kim, and George, who've participated in our programming at FTM. And Film Training Manitoba is an organization which provides workforce development and training to help people find their pathways into working in the film and television industry. And a big part of our organization is trying to attract underrepresented workers, and certainly members of the Asian community would be a part of that as well. And so I was very pleased that Alan and I had an opportunity to talk about partnering on this panel. And I would just say to anyone that is listening today, you've got 3 excellent, very accomplished panelists, and certainly a very accomplished moderator as well that's going to talk about jobs and careers within the film and television industry. So we're very pleased as an organization to take part in this. And anytime Alan Wong is organizing anything, our organization certainly wants to be a part of it. So thank you, Alan, so much for having us. And thank you to all the panelists for taking part in this and encouraging other people to be involved within the film and television industry. Thanks again.
Well, thank you for your confidence, Adam, and those kind words. Your check is in the mail. Anyways, speaking of checks, let's talk about jobs, because everybody who lives in Manitoba has probably heard or read a news article or seen a TV news spot about the booming industry here in Manitoba. It's and in Alberta as well. Like I belong to, so I'm also the president of ACTRA in Manitoba, and from a national perspective, I sit on the National Council, and we know that production is up in Canada across the board, and Alberta and Manitoba are definitely two hot spots when it comes to film and television production in Canada. And so let's talk to some of these film professionals and get their thoughts on their particular careers and the just working in the industry in general. For anyone who's interested in getting involved in the industry, and we'll just kind of explore it a little bit. So to my right, I've got the wonderful Diana Kim. Hi, Diana. Diana is an assistant director, and I'll let her talk a little bit more about her job. Just like kind of a brief description, maybe just your bio. Or description.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the assistant directing department, we're more logistics and communication scheduling. So it sounds really boring, but it is pretty important. We are the ones that help keep things on track, and we are also the assistant directors, so that the director can concentrate on the creative. So we are the ones that deal with all the logistics so that he or she can concentrate on all the creative aspects of the show and keep in contact with all the different departments to keep that vision intact.
Great. Sounds much like running a festival, actually. Just a lot of emailing,
Yes.
a lot of communication
Yes.
and planning. Yeah. All right. And then next to her is Jessie Mickey, who is an art director. Jessie, please.
It's true. I am an art director. And what does an art director do? They're generally sort of in charge of the budget for the art department, and they also look after the props, construction, the paints, and the set deck components of it. So basically, I take my boss, the production designer's vision of what he wants it to look like, and then I tell the other departments to actually create that for him. And me and my boss, we confer a lot, so I don't feel like I'm just a lackey. We have lots of communication, it's very fun. And the AD department is so important. I talk to my boss and the AD department to figure out what the director actually wants. And so we don't have a good AD department. It all just falls apart. So it's so great when Kim's working on that.
Wonderful. And then finally, we have George Arallo, who is an editing whiz, but also dabbles in a lot of other different departments too, right? But please tell us about editing.
Well, working in the post end of it, we take everything that these guys do, we go through the script and make sure that their vision comes across in film and sound. So I will organize footage, the editors will put it together, I'll get a locked cut, and then I'll ship it out to our post houses, our visual effects houses, making sure that down the chain, everyone's vision ends up exactly how they want it to look.
Amazing. Your microphone's a little bit wonky. Yeah, I'll switch with you. Or you can share. Okay, great. Anyways, fantastic. Thank you very much for that sort of brief introduction to your job. I know there's so much more to it than that, and so we're just going to get right into it. But before we do that, I'll let you know a little bit about myself. So I started off as a performer, as an actor, singer. I have a degree in classical voice, actually. But then after like a while, and I used to perform in like musicals and a little bit of opera and also doing some contemporary stuff. But then after a while, I started getting really interested in acting for film and television. So made that transition, got an agent, moved out to Vancouver, and delved into the scene out there because it's a pretty big scene out there, and they have. Well, I mean, you have to have agents when you're out there, but so it was, and that was the first time I dealt with agents because in Winnipeg you don't need an agent for acting work, which is one of the benefits actually of being an actor in Winnipeg. But even in Alberta, when I did work in Alberta for a year and had an agent out there as well, and it's also its own sort of industry that you have to navigate. That being said, I have also delved into sound recording on film. So I worked in the sound department, worked in the production office as well as an assistant production coordinator, and then I've also produced. And so and now I work for film festivals. I work for the Gimli International Film Festival, and this is also another one of my film festivals. And and so I'm happy to share insight on any of those avenues as well. So, but I'll turn it back over to Diana. I basically want to ask each of you how you got into your line of work, how you got interested in doing what you're doing now, and then maybe like tell us a little about the path that it took you to get to where you are now.
I kind of fell into it. I grew up wanting to be a writer and kind of killed all those dreams in my 20s. But I actually ended up working retail with someone who wanted to become a TV director. And we became good friends, and I don't know how this conversation went, but next thing you know, I get a text message from her saying, I really want to do this rom-com with you. I'm like, what rom-com did we talk about? And apparently we talked about me writing one and her directing it. And we did a 3-part miniseries on the internet, and it got a bunch of like awards and stuff like that around the world. And through that, I did a writing workshop, and that group of people did a short film that never got released, so I don't even remember the name and I can't tell you to look it up. But the DP and the producer on that show both told me that I should consider becoming a first or second ED. And I'm like, what is that? And so through some connections my dad had, he got me connected with someone from NSI actually, who
NSI being the National Screen Institute,
yes,
a very wonderful organization who's one of our sponsoring organizations. But they for background information, they provide training and opportunities for filmmakers.
Mm-hmm. So I met with one of these people who got me a bunch of different names of contacts, people to send my resume out to, got me in touch with the Directors Guild of Canada, who put on some workshops, told me about Film Training Manitoba, and through that I sent out my resume, and it probably took me about a year and a half to, gain the confidence to be like, I'm at a place in my life where this is something I can pursue, and got an internship through Film Training Manitoba onto a film set as the trainee AD, and it turned out to not be a training position, but an actual position where I'm part of the team and having to rent the trailers and do the actual job. And I've been working in film and television full-time ever since.
That's kind of the best way to get into it and learn it. Just get thrown into the fire,
Yeah.
right, and just figure it out. And so I'm not surprised that happened, because a lot of interns, an internship basically is just another way to for the production to get another employee that they desperately need without having to pay full price essentially. But I'm not surprised that you went through the FTM internship program, because FTM I'm pretty sure that almost everybody that's working in the industry has connected through FTM at some point. Film Training Manitoba, that is like either with their online courses or whatever training courses that they have. I definitely have, and I remember like in my early days, having appointments and meeting with Adam, who was the program manager at the time or something like that, and we would have consultations about like how to get involved. And just like the one-on-one sort of like consult was really helpful for me to get into like doing sound and stuff like that too. Jesse, how about you?
Well, long time ago, I used to work in the Forks at the Children's Museum. Preface, long time ago when I was a teen, I would illegally download
You mean you're not a teen now?
I'm not a teen now, despite my youthful appearance. I downloaded all the old Adobe softwares like Photoshop and Illustrator, and then learned how to use vectors as a teenager. And then went to university, thought I wanted to learn English, and then realized I didn't. Anyways, working at the Children's Museum, and my boss, my still current boss, was working there as a guy who would just make things for them. He would just like make a whole car out of wood for kids to play, just creative stuff. And he was working on it, he needed a 3D animation for the Children's Museum. So I rendered that for him because I could do it, no problem, because I just taught myself all these things when I was a teenager. And then he's like, hey, I could use you for movies. So I started doing animations, contract work for graphics. Then I got hired on things as graphics, and then got in the union, and then turns out the art director that he kept hiring was just not good, so he got me to do art directing. So apparently the only difference between graphic design and art directing is knowing how to use spreadsheets as well. So after I've been doing art directing for three years now, I think. I've done probably like way too many movies for that amount of time, like probably 10 movies or 11, maybe 12 movies. I think I do 4 a year at least. They're all Christmas and Hallmark. Anyway, it's basically luck, because I met that guy and he needed the talents that I happen to have, and it was a good time to get into it.
Interesting. Yeah, and we'll talk about more maybe like about the difference between, sort of like the projects that you're working on. Hallmark is like a machine, right? Like they just churn out movie after movie. Like it's a finely well-oiled machine, that company. Anyways, we'll chat about that and the differences between that and the kind of movies that we would see at a festival, right? And so just for people's clarity. But George, go ahead.
My journey was a little bit different than everyone else's. When you're talking about way back, when I talk about way back, my first introduction into actually graphics was at the Winnipeg bus station when it was beside U of W, and the course actually took place in the basement. So I'm a little bit older than you are. So long story short, I went there to do graphics, found out that I suck at it, but I could edit. So then I went to Toronto, went to school there, learned how to edit, ended up getting a job with a company called Cup of Coffee Animation, did a stint there, worked on Discovery shows. Super expensive to live out there because doing the freelance thing, you had to feast or famine. So I would send out old school snail mail letters to all the dream companies I wanted to work to. And I actually joked with my girlfriend at the time that I had gotten so many rejection letters, I should wallpaper my apartment with it. Because it was from like LucasArts and like Paramount and like Universal Studios. So I came back to Winnipeg to do a working vacation. I ended up going to MidCan and just cut a demo reel. And they were super surprised that someone just walks in off the street saying, "Can I use your Avid?" Yeah, and then I just ended up staying and then worked doing branding and commercials, PSAs. Then I slowly worked into doing features, and that's where I live now, doing features, and started branching out to doing directing a few indies that actually star Alan.
Whoa.
Oh, proof that I am an actor. Okay, that's fantastic. So four very like sort of experienced people in very different aspects of film. So we have the post-production, we have sort of like the art department, which is offset, and then we have the assistant director who is very much on set, and then myself as well, who in these whatever various departments that I have dabbled in, and I think it's really interesting and probably lesser known or lesser glorified positions in film, right? These are the working positions, like where people are making careers for themselves. Because I mean, as a filmmaker, as a director, as a writer, or even as an actor, you're doing one project here, a project there, maybe like, but then you've got like so much time in between, getting the funding together and that sort of thing, or writing the story, or doing whatever. It's very inconsistent, and that's something that I definitely found as an actor. It's feast or famine. But whereas if you're established in these fields, you can be working all the time and basically building a career out of it. Correct?
Yes, it takes a while to get there though. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and only recently in the last 4 or 5 years, it wasn't pounding the pavement looking for gigs. For me, fortunately, got into the DGC and found a great company that is super supportive, and I have a post team that the producers trust and just say, "We're going to do this next," and then they can walk away and do whatever they need to do. Like when I talk to people, explain what I actually do for my job, it's usually I make sure that the producers don't have to worry about production and getting the movie delivered, visual effects.
I think that maybe, it's probably an indication of the overall market in Winnipeg, right? Because I'm sure that even ADs were very like highly, coveted sort of positions or in demand roles in film were very inconsistent before we had this boom where now there's like something filming all the time, right? Multiple productions filming all the time. And so that being said, editing, I know for sure, is one of these post-production anything is very in demand right now in Winnipeg.
Oh, completely. Civilians. Completely. Dialogue editors are few and far between in this town. If anyone wants a gig, become a dialogue editor.
What's that?
It is not what you think. So when we output whatever 24 tracks of audio, it'll go to our dialogue editor. They will take out the hiss, pops, whatever. If they need to if they have to do, for example, if we're having the conversation and the shot goes outside the room, they'll adjust the sound, they'll clean up the sound, they'll make it pretty pristine, or they'll dirty it up, whatever we need them to do. Those guys are few and far between. I know that for a few productions that I've done lately, we're always trying to track someone down, and more often than not, it's kind of like we have to wait for someone.
Wow.
But in regard to the post end of it, when I came up doing it, I had to go through Toronto and do it out there, and I came back and didn't know anyone. So I've actually know a few people that, because I'm super old, their kids are like graduating high school and want to get into it. So I try and fast track them. And people will reach out to me and say, so-and-so is interested in doing the film thing. Can you help them out? It's like, yeah, it'll cost you a cup of coffee or dim sum. But I'll have a conversation with them, and we'll try and figure out what they want to do. And usually, since they know what I do, they want to do the post end of it. So I'll start training them on software like Avid, or get them coming out to the independent stuff we did. Like we had Parker out on Jeff's film, and I'll start gearing them up to take my place, because what I do is not where I'm going to stay. Going to do a lateral shift over to directing or whatever. But yes, getting people into the industry, because now we are getting so busy, we're finding shortage of people to pick up positions. So I will help out anyone who wants to get into post, specifically to train them to get an entry position, like doing dailies, and then grooming them to do an assistant job, and and getting them working towards their group.
So is that the entry level, is dailies?
I don't know if it's really entry level. That's where I start. If someone comes to me and says, my son, my daughter wants to get into it, it's like, okay, cool. I know where to start them, and I will take them. I will train them to do dailies, because it is.
What are dailies for those in the audience?
Oh, right. Dailies is after the shoot day, we'll have transport bring hard drives back to the studio, and depending on what it's shot, like if it's shot in red or whatever, we have to transcode them so the Avid could use them, so we can edit them. So we have our dailies technician run them through DaVinci, and I will get them to do a timecode burn. I'll get the information on the frame that I need to do my job. They will compress the files, because usually we're getting everyone to do 4K, but I think the last two movies, we were dabbling in 4 and 8K, and I think actually the series I'm on now, we are pushing 5 and 6K.
Right, just the files get bigger and bigger.
Bigger and bigger.
Yeah, bigger and better all the time.
But we're using a new Sony camera that's compressing 8K to smaller files.
Right.
Sorry, this is all techie stuff.
It's so techy. Yeah, so technical.
Yeah.
It's okay. People can, if you want to really do your research, like all this stuff can be found like online, or you can read up about like what a daily is, or what the different positions are. And actually a really good, I guess, I'm not sure if it's covered in the set etiquette course, but they usually go through sort of like what the different positions are, right? But there are resources online that you can find descriptions of all these positions.
Right. I say that a dailies technician is an entry point to the post department, because that is where post starts, right? Everything is done production. These guys do their job. We get hard drives, and then that's where post starts. And that's the first position, first person that gets the footage to prep it for everything else down the line.
And so would you recommend then, instead of, because you said you would help to train them if you were like, taking somebody on, but would you recommend, are there like courses out there, like formal training, like schools, or do they teach that in film school, or do you think that it's better to learn on the job?
We should ask Adam about getting a workhorse like that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's something that maybe is a conversation for Adam and film training.
Like, so, again, I have, since I'm old, I do have a lot of friends that have kids that want to get into the film industry. And, for me, it was sell all your stuff, go to Toronto, get an education, pay your dues, blah, blah, blah. It was very difficult to find a mentor.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Like, it's like oh, that guy does it, I'll just email him. And what I found, the community here, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere else, there are no stupid questions. You can email anyone and they will be super glad to help you. Like I've emailed about funding or, Blackmagic cameras or, DaVinci stuff. And, it's, oh, great, thanks for reaching out, and problem solve or get more information. Everyone is so welcoming in this community.
And everyone's so busy that sorry, you want to say something?
I just wanted to piggyback on what you said. I like Jesse and is this on? Jesse and I do actually have a story about that because.
Well, switch because you might not be using that. Let's see very loud.
Okay, yeah, Jesse and I literally have a story like this where maybe 2 years ago we were working on a project together. A friend of a friend took me out for lunch because he's like, you work in film, I want to get into film. So we sat down and like, what do you want to do? And he's like, I want to get into set decorating. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about that, but I work with Jesse who knows that. Let me see if Jesse will be willing to, be a contact. And he was. And next thing you know, I see him offset working in the department that he wanted to.
That's great.
Yeah.
I've also had lunch with people and did the same thing for an hour. It's great. I mean, it's a small community and we all sort of need to help each other to sort of find our footing in, right?
Well, I was at, I have friends that play in bands and I went to go see a band called the Road Rockets and the Don Waynes. And a mutual friend of ours approached me at the show and said, oh yeah, my son wants to get into set deck. And I'm like, you know what, that's not really my thing, but Hopper does that. And it was the small community and being able to go, yeah, that guy does it. And it's just, oh yeah, come here. And it's, helping each other out.
They say like it's not what you know, it's who you know. I believe in film, it's both. Because you do have to know something and you have to know people, obviously. It's very much a network industry, but once that person can see that you're sharp and you are willing to learn and you're picking things up really quick, it'll snowball.
It's like crew based.
Exactly.
Yeah, like when you fall into a good crew, like whoever the boss is, when they get hired, they're gonna hire everybody else they have worked with. And usually for us, when we do multiple movies in a row, it's like a train. If you stay on the train, you get through it, and people generally like you, they're gonna hire you for the next one because it'd be more hassle to find someone new. So just do a good job and you'll keep getting hired.
Okay, Jesse, let's stay on you for a little while. Because your department, because the productions, I feel like the art department and the production side it's so vast. Like there's so many different skill sets within that department.
Yes.
Talk about it for a little bit.
Well, there's a bunch of different ones. There's construction and paint, which I won't get into. I mean, if you want to be a construction person, great, let me know. I'll direct you to the construction people. But more so, my main focus is set deck and props and graphics. And graphics is the one we are most desperate for people. If you know someone who's, I got a call the other day from someone else named Jesse, who's running a parallel career to mine, asking if I could do graphics for his movie, and I also asked if he could do graphics for my movie. So it's a very funny conversation. And then he told me that he's already going to Red River, talking to the students, being like, hey, you want to work in this movie? And like, quit school and join this movie, which like they should. It's crazy right now how desperate people are. I found one for this movie just barely. She's like, normally does freelance tattoos, but she's going to come to this graphics for mine. Graphics, get into it. It's so good.
I actually know a lot of some of the volunteers of this festival are graphic artists, like design students.
I wonder if there's any overlap with.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, Red River College has an amazing graphic design program. I'm sure like a lot of the, maybe hooking up with the professors or the instructors there to kind of like create a bit of a funnel.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing, the graphics is really behind in the union. What their description of graphics isn't what movies need anymore. So if you really want to get hired, learn how to make fake apps, fake websites, all that sort of jazz. Because I'm like the only one in the city who knows how to make that apparently. Like everything, they keep asking me to do it. I'm literally like contracting my friends to do this work because there's too much of it. So just learn how to make this. It's not hard at all.
You made fake video games too.
Oh, that's right. That was
That
hilarious. Yeah, fake apps, fake video games. I mean, I should know how to code, so that has been a very big boon, of course, in all that. And part of how I was able to move a little bit higher in that ranking as well. Props is also good. Always need more props.
Coding. But you sound very smart and technical. I'm going to talk to you about crypto later.
Yeah. Well, what is money though, right?
All right, Diana.
Yes.
All right. What were we talking about? We were talking about how to get into your line of work. Like, what would you recommend to people who wanted to maybe? Because I know that assistant directing can be a path to directing. Some very good directors have gone that path, right? Because you just work your way up. And so maybe talk about that. But there's also people who are also just very good at being that director. And then they can move up to like a first, right? But they don't necessarily make that jump to directing because it's a little bit of a different mindset, mentality, right? More, but anyway, please.
Yeah, from the people I've talked to, it's kind of a pathway to learn more about like the producing side of things. A lot of the local production managers, line producers, they have a background in assistant directing because you have to think logistically, not just the creative side of it, but the non-creative impacts of it. You know, if we change the schedule because it's suddenly snowing and we need the scene outdoors, so we have to basically reschedule everything so we get this snow. You know, what are the financial impacts? Can we get all the actors in? Can we get these props in time? Can we get the set ready in time? Can we get this ready in time? And the special equipment required and the special, you know, the additional labor and all that stuff. So it kind of gives you a sense of not just the on-set decisions, but the off-set implications of any decision that is made. Because it's not as simple as, we want to pull this scene, let's bring this person in. Well, we got to see, is this person available to come in? Do they have a ride out there? Do we have the props for the scene? Do we have the sets for the scene? Do we have the costumes for these scenes? Do we have do the other actors know so that they know we now have to do the dialogue for the scene and are they ready for that? So anything you think is just like one quick decision is a bigger impact. Do we have the answers for the scene?
I have total respect for the AD department because
kudos to you guys.
No kidding. Like out of all the departments, I think on a film set, I feel like that department you have to be the most, the best multitaskers, obviously, and then also just have the best sort of overall view of everything that's going on. You're really like coordinating everything. And you work closely with the production office to coordinate, but it's just on set, you are the ones kind of running the show. And it's so impressive because to get to that point, you just have to, it's way more than just linear thinking, right? It's linear, lateral thinking, it's overall thinking, like it's everything together. And kind of boggles my mind a little bit.
Yeah, I would say if you want to get into eating or you're interested, the Directors Guild of Canada, the Manitoba branch, we now have something called the MAP program, which is kind of like an apprenticeship program where you can streamline into getting more AD work for training. But I would also say if you see ADs, tell them, there have been people in multiple departments who have told me that they're interested, but they don't, they've told other people in film, but they haven't told us. And so we're a small enough community that if we're not available, we get asked, hey, because you're not available, do you have anyone you'd recommend? And if we don't know that you're interested, we won't know to pass along your name.
There's that word of mouth again, and totally and that's what I've told other people too, is that, you just gotta be around. You gotta make yourself known. You gotta make your name out, get your name out there so that when people are thinking of who can I, who can I bring on to fill this position, or who can I call because some production needs like a daily or whatever for something, and then if you come to mind, there's your in, right?
I would also say though, if someone doesn't know who you are and you've been working in film for a while, don't take that as a bad thing. Usually the first people who people know about are the really good ones and the really bad ones. So if we don't know your name, that's pretty good because that means you're somewhere in the middle.
I completely agree with introducing yourself, because that just happened to me on a show. I need to take some time off, and it was like I needed to get someone to fill in for me. I knew a few people that couldn't do it, but someone said to me, "Have you asked?" And it was like, "Yes, I will check with them." And if I didn't, it's one of the things where, again, if you know someone and you can direct them in the right place, it's perfect. That happened to an assistant editor there that I was working with, and he just happened to reach out to me and just asked me a couple of questions. I got tapped to do a show literally the next day, couldn't do it, but I said, "Oh, I got an email and text from this person, why don't you give them a shot?" So now he's in it, DGC member, and it's all word of mouth. Like, again, introduce yourself, show interest into department heads or people just working in the department. And stuff like this does happen. Like, oh, so-and-so can do it. Because you're right, it is a little bit of a shortage of crew. And if you're right, if you're not available, have a backup, get people in there, because the industry is growing super quick, a lot quicker than I thought it would. And it's just, get everyone in there that we can.
It's a great time to join because normally there's union rules about how quickly you can work and stuff like that. But for the past 2 years, I haven't had a single problem being like, there's nobody there. I need to hire these permittees that are brand new. And they're like, absolutely.
Right.
And I mean, it's in their best interest too, because as a permittee, you have to pay them 5% of your income anyway, which goes away after you become a member.
It also helps the industry grow, Jesse.
I mean, yes, I suppose it does. I suppose it does.
And
become a permittee as soon as you can in IATSE.
I'm a big proponent of the unions, but obviously because there's a lot of history there with the unions and the labor unions and how, why they're important, just because of, essentially studios back in the day, they would obviously take huge advantage of their workers so that's why the unions are there to sort of like protect your rights as a worker, also to like fight for your, pension and benefits and all these and the rates that you're being paid, because obviously if there's so many people wanting to work in this industry, it's so easy to undercut, right?
Yes, to clarify, unions are good in general, definitely.
Some advice I'd give to, people who want to get in is, even if you know someone, remind them of that you're there and that you're interested, because especially because of COVID, everything's gone as digital as possible. So, before where we got 10 emails a day, it's now 50 emails a day. And so instead of meeting one person online, it's now meeting 20 people online. So if you've already introduced yourself or introduced yourself to someone, like, don't feel bad if you just poke them a bit and you're like, "Hey, remember me? I emailed you about such and such," and just remind them that you're there. I've worked with people who, who will forget the amount of people who have applied for the job because there's so many people that did apply. So when we're looking for people, I'd be like, "Well, what about this person? They applied." It's like, "Oh, right, I forgot." So just the gentle reminder would be good. And then the other piece of advice I completely forgot.
Well, we'll come around to it again. I'm sure it'll come back to you. Something else I wanted to chat about. We've talked about how to get into the industry a little bit, but the other part wanted to talk about is why people want to get into the industry. Like, I know there are benefits and like pros and cons to every job. Challenges, but also perks. And so let's talk a little bit about that. What are some of the benefits that you're experiencing for your, like, the things that make you really enjoy your job, right? Maybe.
Well, it's very fun because it's always different. It's the main thing. It's like you're not flipping burgers, the same burgers every day. You're flipping different burgers and different kinds of burgers for different people who want different kinds of burgers all the time, and it's great. That's why I like it. Also, it's sort of a lifestyle kind of thing too, because you'll work 12 hours a day, every single day, weekends included, for 6 months straight, and then maybe you won't work for another 6 months, wait for the next big series to come by. So people do that, totally. They'll take one big thing a year, and that's just what they do. Or they'll take a couple smaller things a year and make it through that way. But anyway, like, there'll always be some downtime until you're crazy successful and want that. But I enjoy being able to have a couple months off and then go to my cabin and go do things where other people just would never have that opportunity. So I think it's very interesting and unique.
But the problem is, if you're on something, you don't have time.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're married to it, and my girlfriend doesn't like that, for sure. It's not good. And that's sort of a universal thing too. All the girlfriends that I know are kind of like, oh, maybe you shouldn't do this forever.
Diana?
I would say the biggest draw for me is that, like Jesse said, it is different every time you work. You can work with the exact same team, but because something about it is different, it brings on new challenges. It brings on new ways of thinking. It's in every department. We're constantly problem solving. We're constantly having to deal with people and budgets and just just having to problem solve everything, meeting new people constantly, and because a lot of it's contract work. If you don't like someone, you don't really have to see them after 2 weeks. But
That's
I would say
actually the biggest draw for me is that I remember early on in my career working for a company, but knowing that at the end of the contract, it's like, I never have to see these people ever again. And that was a huge draw. And also the fact that I'm not built for bigger hours, easily do 12, 14-hour days starting at any time after 9 a.m. and then working how long. But it's one of the things where I explain it to you, just can't flick on creativity or whatever you need to do like at 9 a.m. and then shut it off. I always find that I'm more coherent and be able to get more accomplished later on in the day versus having to be on at 9 o'clock and turn it off at 5. Love the flexibility, love the idea of working, and then, I'm gonna take a few weeks off and wait for this show to come around.
Yeah, I know a lot of people actually who like work on production, like they said, for 6 months or whatever, and I'm not sure, is this true? They can apply for EI?
Yes, you
and then
can.
You just get paid
because you're laid off.
for the duration of your break. So you're still getting paid even though anyways, you're getting paid well. And you're getting paid well too. Like once you're if you're a union, I guess if you're in a union position without paying the dues, even if you're not, even as a permittee, you're getting paid decently well. But people can basically just save up a bunch of money and then they go travel the world for however long they want, and then they come back, right? It's kind of that flexibility, I think, is really appealing to a lot of us, young people. Anybody, really. Anybody.
It's creative. Even if you're just tallying numbers, it's still creative, and that's why I like it. Creative accounting.
I think, even though it is creative, we do have to be realistic that it's not always our creative vision that is being, we're there to serve the production and the director. So as creative as we want to be, we still have to play within this box that we're given.
Right. The analogy I was taught when I was going to school was, it's not your car, you're just driving it.
Okay, so would you say that that's one of the cons or just one of the facts?
I mean, if the director does something you think is silly, of course you're going to do it and never say anything about it.
Okay, let's do some real talk now about some of the challenges that you experience in your career.
I love every movie that I've worked on, and there's no issues at all.
Your bosses are in the audience tonight, right? Hey.
it's specific, like, depending on what level you are, like if we do an independent flick, there might be some tension between me and the camera guy. Inside joke. But, if we're doing something like a Lifetime or a Hallmark, we're looking at it and it's like, okay, and this is how the movie goes, and there's usually nothing we find that we scratch our head with. For me, lately, I'm finding more of doing the independent stuff that I'm not writing or directing, and I'll sit there and go, okay, why did you do that? And then I'll get on the phone and I'll be like, why is this? And someone will say, well, it's because of this. And then I will tell them, usually politely, sometimes not, this is not gonna work because of this reason. And it's, why did you shoot it this way? Because the director wanted this. It's that kind of thing where, okay, I'll flag something, but I'll have a conversation and ask them why they've done it. But on a higher level movie, it'll be like, that is not my job. You can mention things like, did we get this? Or again, why is it shot this way? And then someone will get back to us. This is what the director's vision is. This is what we have to follow. And I'd say, okay, cool, then we will. Make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think the entire time you were talking about that, I was thinking about
zoning out.
I was totally thinking about, oh man, there's so much work and the hours are so long. You're talking about like 12-hour days and stuff like that. I mean, this is a pretty common theme that runs through when you're talking about working in film, right? It's just the long days. And sometimes it's great, yes, because you're making overtime, you're getting paid for those hours, obviously, and you're getting taken care of very well with meals and crafty and that sort of thing. But it does get exhausting, right? So let's talk a little bit about like the mental health and the life balance. Like just you were saying, it leads to maybe problems with relationships.
Only after, the 6-month mark, and she's like, I'd really like to go on a date maybe. And I'm like, I just gotta finish, we're just shooting this thing, it's tricky. I gotta print this huge thing in Mountain before 9 a.m. tomorrow, I gotta do it. Sometimes it's, you're working all night, that's just how it is.
So how do you
great question.
maintain your mental health?
I don't know, I'm really bad at that sort of thing. I just sort of disregard it and think, I'm gonna have 6 months to do nothing after this if I want. So I'll sleep after the movie, and that's an unhealthy thing. So I would say I don't have a healthy plan in mind to deal with it, but I don't really get stressed that often either. So I'm never really that affected, I guess. I was trying to be unaffected.
Oh.
By everything.
Apparently gravity does affect you.
Sticky floor.
So good. Diana.
It's something I'm still figuring it out. So I don't really know. What has helped me is finding, support within my peers. They have helped me, they've, helped mentor me as I've progressed in my career. They are people I go to for advice. There are people I go to unwind because they get it. They understand the job and they get the downsides. Like we can sit back and laugh about anything that was a bit disastrous or was actually genuinely good. I would say the harder shows have been the ones where, when you go through it together, it kind of solidified our bonds really. And just finding friendship and support within the peers have helped me in my mental health journey, and also finding things outside of film to do, like little hobbies, just to get your mind off of work, because a lot of times if that's what your day is for DGC, our minimum day is 14 hours. So I've done those 16-hour days, 18-hour days. Sometimes you need that time to not think about work, or else you're always thinking about it. So just find a probably fund outside friends, outside thing, but still have that support within to help you.
I'm gonna change my answer to that too. If my boss and I weren't on the same page all the time and would laugh at all the problems that we have and just sort of have an air of like, this is ridiculous sometimes, then like if he was like an angry guy and would be like, oh, do your work, then that would be a terrible time all the time. I'm stressing out, but I'm never stressing out because we like to say, no solution, no problem.
Yeah, well, that's something that I do want to point out, that because you're a crew and this is such a highly collaborative art form and industry, that you do end up making those bonds in your work, right? Like, so I'm sure that the people you see every day in, day out, those are people you end up, making relationships with and friendships, and you really do rely on each other, right? You really are like a team, in that sense. And so that's a really great thing. But what we're talking about, the mental health aspect of it and the long hours and the challenges, these are some of the things that obviously are ongoing issues with the industry that I want to be very frank with anybody who's coming into it, and just that they have an understanding of what they're getting into. These are the things that the unions, frankly, they strike about, right? Is like the hours or the commuting or whatever, like, and so there's still issues that are being worked on, and but there are organizations and individuals who are working on these issues to hopefully make it better for everybody. And productions, I don't think it's getting any easier with technology and with all the streaming platforms and all the industry. With growth comes a lot of challenges, right? Growing pains, as they say. And so there is also that side of it. But that being said, obviously you still want to do it because it's the industry, right? It's show business.
See, I'm super lucky where I don't have to go to set. I've done Lifetime movies and theatrical releases from my living room. And I've been fortunate enough to, every production house or studio that I've had to go into and work over the last 4, 5, 6 years, pet friendly.
Nice.
So if I'm in my edit suite, it's soundproof, I'll scream. Or I'll go out and more often than not, there are 2 or 3 dogs running around. So it's very easy to get down on the floor with one of the dogs, because some of them are a little older. You just pet them and your stress goes away, and then I can get back up and go do it again. I'm kind of lucky in the regards that I'm a little bit separated from the entire crew. Yes, we have to deal with people and whatnot, but being able to take a breather or, go out and find open road and listen to tunes on your lunch hour, because fortunately I do get a lunch hour, and like, I know that you guys put in like insane hours and lunches at really weird times. Yeah, but yeah, I'm super, super lucky for what I do. And like every time I hear an issue on set or something, I breathe a sigh of relief, and it's like, I'm gonna deal with it, but I don't have to deal with all of it, So you guys are freaking heroes, actually.
So funny when I see like there's this platform called Frame.io that sort of the editors use to talk to the producers about what's actually being made and stuff. And I see the comments sometimes. I'm just like, man, I'm glad I don't have to interact with those people. Oh man, and so like, man, that's tough to do what you do. I think interacting with those people.
We will have a conversation about producers and directors on Frame.io. It's a great platform because I was working on, it wasn't Frame.io, it's the same idea as Frame.io, but it was for Farpoint, and it was a show called Homeland Homicide, and that's how we communicated. I did a series from home, so I would upload it, and since everyone has their own hours and whatever, it's like I could get notes at midnight and start working on it, and it's awesome. But again, I do understand the Frame.io. We are super blessed again that working on Homeland Homicide, there's like 1 or 2 producers. Mm-hmm. But something for a bigger production, you're going to have more people that have more say. So working with other editors that are doing the Frame.io, they're getting notes that are emailed to them. They're on Frame.io, like there's different producers, and sometimes the producers don't communicate very well. And it's kind of like, well, we want this blue. Well, we want this red. And it's kind of like, who, so it's kind of like, well, I'm gonna make it orange.
All right. Well, you know what? We're almost getting near the the final section of the panel today, and I'd like to actually throw it out to anybody who has any questions from either the audience here or or anyone watching online. Because one of the features of StreamYard, which is what we're using to stream this panel, is that you can, on either our YouTube or Facebook, you can make comments, ask questions in the comments, and it'll show up on our back end. And so if is Tommy here? He's probably back there. Maybe Tommy can come out here and let us know if there are, or actually you can put up questions, comments on the screen, and so that we can actually read them. But if there's anybody in the audience here who has a question, please feel free to ask. Anybody have a question here? Okay, while people are thinking about that, and while the comments are maybe happening in real time, I'll just ask one more question for all of you to answer. And that would be, what do you foresee yourself doing in the future? Do you want to stay in this position, or do you want to move into another position, or do you want to, what's your future plan?
Ninja. Directing, because I think we had this conversation when we were doing the caper, and editing, for me, editing and directing go hand in hand. I was talking to Jeff, who wrote it, and I said, I've already read the script, and I've already cut the entire thing in my head. Here's a shot list of every shot that I'd like, so we hand it to our DOP, and, hopefully we get every shot. Sometimes you don't. But for me, the next step is to direct. So that's why, I've been working with a couple producers and done a couple independent flicks, and just trying to get the directing chops up. But again, it's finding a project that you really, really like is key, because then you don't mind the long hours, and at this level, you don't mind not getting paid for it. I'll read it, I'll cut it in my head, I'll go online or grab frame shots from things I find interesting, usually a lot of Winter Soldier stuff, and I will put it into a document, and I'll hand it to the DOP prior to shooting it, and it'll be like, scene 1, shot 1, I want this wide from this angle, and go through it, because that's how it's going to get cut.
See, you're talking about directing from a technical side, whereas my experience in directing is actually from the acting side, right? Working with actors, and there's the actors director, and then there's the technical director. And I think there's obviously people who are good at both, but then there are people who come from the editing side, who'd be more that, and then people who come from the story side maybe, and are more about coaxing the story or the performances they want out of the actors, or but ultimately both serving the story.
Right, exactly. That's that's why I enjoy working with another director who does that sort of thing. For me, it's absorb as much information as you can. So, and try and share as much as you can. So for me to come in and say, these are the shots, and then have Jeff say, Alan, can you do it this way? That kind of thing. I think being able to work with someone else is always a bonus, because then, as I keep telling everyone, iron sharpens iron, right? So going in, not having that other half of it, the project, the art will not be as good as it could be.
Well, great. How about you, Diane? What's your goal in the future?
I don't know. And that's kind of the beauty of it. There's always a different job to try, a different skill set to learn. You'll never be like the most perfect person in your position, because you're always going to be working with a different director, a different producer, a different first AD, a different something that everyone has a different way that they communicate, a different way that they want things done. So you're always going to be learning, you're always going to be adapting. And so I have no idea where I want this to take me.
The world's your oyster.
Yeah.
How would you, Jesse?
Well, I'm an art director now, and the only creative one above me is my boss, the production designer, who's the one that actually, you know, draws the pictures of what they envisioned and then give it around and make sure it happens kind of thing. And that's where I guess I would end up, because I think my boss is eventually going to move, and then I think they're just going to put me in that position. They were going to for the movie right now, but I'm already doing the series, so they couldn't do it. So that's too bad, but I'm excited for the series anyway. But yeah, production designer, and then after that, nothing. I don't want to be a director. I don't want to be a producer, and that's all I can think of that's higher than that. I guess I could do like editing stuff, but no, I think I'd just rather stay where I am. I like it. I like the super creative part of it, and production designer is actually getting to where you are actually making real creative decisions in conjunction with the director to be like, what do you want this to look like? We can put some Ferris wheels here. We can make them blue, and then like, yeah. Wow, yeah, I'll got cost extra for that. I'll talk.
Well, there's something very beautiful about that too, you know, just be very satisfied with what you're doing. Like, I think in this industry, there's a lot of this hustle mentality. You gotta constantly be like hustling, gotta constantly be improving. But actually, if you are just fine with where you are, there's something beautiful, and also it takes the stress off of you, right? It takes the pressure off of you. So, and that's fantastic. So do we have any questions? Yes.
I just have a post-production question. Like, does it matter like what software you use that stuff? Is it Avid or Premiere Pro, or is it just like
A software question.
Great question.
For you, George.
Could you repeat that on the mic for our stream friends?
So the question was, do you have any software that you would recommend for post-production?
Yes. I feel very strongly about this because I know that every post house that I've ever worked at, about 99% of them, will use Avid. And you will be hard pressed to find a shop that doesn't use Avid. Farpoint uses Premiere Pro, and it's a great product. For me, it all depends on what you're doing. Like, are you talking feature-length film? Are you talking TikTok? Are you talking YouTube? Because with Premiere Pro, all that is super easy and very doable in Premiere Pro. I am actually doing a movie called King of Killers that we have done in Premiere Pro, and this is the first feature that I've done in Premiere Pro since 2018. And I know that when we did our first one in 2018, I know that there's a lot of issues getting AAFs out, that's used for color and audio. But fortunately, being in the business, I was able to call editor friends in Toronto and here, and it's like, this is a situation, and being able to get the info to get the delivery out properly. But under the 20 movies that I've done, I would say 17 were done on Avid.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, awesome. We've got a question from a comment. Kathira Mock asks, I recently graduated from my performing arts program in Vancouver and am both excited and intimidated to join the industry. How drastic are the differences in the industry between crew and actors? Would you recommend actors also take on roles as PA or other crew to appreciate what goes on behind the scenes? Thanks. All right, interesting. I think that maybe Diana and I myself could answer this question a little bit. What have you seen because I know that actually a lot of actors do move from, like they would start with maybe doing background roles or like actor roles, like one-liners and that sort of thing in movies, and then they kind of get that experience being on set, and then they see, oh, there's all these other things that I could be doing, and they just want to be a part of it, so they'll move into like a crew role. How do you feel about that?
Well, it doesn't matter what position you want to be. The more you understand other people's roles, the the easier it is for you to know how to communicate with them and to know the information that they're downloading to you. From a performer crew point of view, I would say one possible disadvantage is that you're not really trained on how to read the different types of paperwork and stuff like that. Whereas for crew, that's kind of our lifeline. We have to know how to read the different paperwork that we get, and that could be an advantage that you have because you are a crew member over a performer. You know how to read a day at a day. You know how to read a one line. You know how to read these. And another thing is you understand these words that I'm saying, which are day at a day, one line, shoot schedule.
There's all these like the industrial lingo is very important to understand if you're working in a crew. But as an actor, I would say that how I got started in film, I just did background. And I know a lot of people who start doing background, they're just an extra on set, but they get to spend that time because as an actor, say you are, going for auditions and that whole process and working at your craft, and that's fantastic, right? But then you get on set, like say the first couple times you get on set, and everything is happening around you, and unless you are sort of used to it or prepared for it, it can kind of throw you sometimes, because it's a very technical art. It's definitely different from theater, where you can kind of practice and have multiple times on stage to kind of like get over your stage fright or whatever, and then performing for a live audience to get that immediate reaction, right? Whereas on film, it's such a technical art. You have to stand here, you have to walk over there, you have to do this motion, and it's all got to be kind of like seamless, and you have to think about where the camera is, and and you have to like say your line in a very like and feel. It's much more nuanced, right? So your acting, I might get blasted for this, but your acting needs to be more genuine on film and TV because the camera just catches so much in your facial expressions and in your eyes and in your voice. So yes, I think that having that experience on set does help because if you're, like say if you are a regular background actor, you become comfortable with it. You see what happens, you see the actors, you watch what they do, and you kind of like understand, okay, but then when you actually are put in that position, it still takes a couple times to kind of like get over, figure out what you're trying to do and think of all these things at the same time. That being said, I know a lot of actors who in larger centers who, once you get to a certain point in your career as an actor, you don't want to really do background because you don't want to be, you want to be known for your acting, right? As opposed to be seen as a background performer. And I know that I personally don't think that there should be, but there is a bit of a hierarchy and a difference in perception between background and actors, right? Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know. But I would say some other advantages is, you have the networking aspect of it. You also get to see behind the scenes a bit more. If you're the performer or even as a background person, once we're done shooting and we need to start setting up the scene, we take all the performers off set. So you don't really get to see just who interacts with who and what's happening because from a crew standpoint, we want to help you guys stay focused, yeah, on your performance. And so we kind of want to take you away from all the behind the scenes type stuff. So from what I understand, being a performer can be pretty isolating because you're in the green room or background building for sometimes hours, while we're setting up. And so it really all depends on what you want to get out of it. Some people want to concentrate on performance. Some people want to know the technical things because they want to direct one day or try something else. And I think Also, working on crew gives you that flexibility to be able to get um, these, like say you book a gig and you're performing for a day and you work a 9 to 5, they may not be as understanding if you're like, I need the day off because I'm going to be in a movie. Whereas if you're already working in film, it's something we already understand. So if you're already working on a show where it's a bit more flexible, then, you know, I don't know if you've ever been on a show and you're like, hey, I booked a gig, I need to stay off.
Yeah, actually that has happened to me, and it depends on what your position is, obviously, right? If you're in a high demand position like a second AD, you're not going to be able to take a day off to be in the movie that you're working on, right? It's kind of, it's just not as common to see.
I did once as a graphics person. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, great.
If they wouldn't pay me to do both at the same time.
I think it totally depends on the production, and you know, if the director really wants you, you're just like, yeah, you're
That's what happened. He's like, you want to pay the movie?
Yeah.
Okay. I was the Asian supervisor of an electronics store.
I love that they have to describe you as Asian. You can't be just an electronics store supervisor.
No.
All right, this is another issue that we'll maybe have another panel on. So there's another question here. Oh, by the same person. What's your advice for Asian creatives when it comes to occupying the space where we are often underrepresented in? Ah, there you go.
I always try to hire minorities and ladies all the time. My entire crew is all ladies, I think, actually, now that I think about it, which is great. Because if you have the opportunity to make those choices, then you can. And I'm glad I'm in a position to make those choices. So change comes from within, I guess.
Word.
Yeah, I would say, I think we as a community need to start creating those spaces. You know, Jesse's doing it in his own department. I don't have hiring power, so it's not something I can do, but I do know what it takes to, you know, go out and make a short film, make my own independent film, connect with these people to create that space for myself.
Yes. I'm technically not in the hiring position, but I like the idea of if you want to get out there, go out there, make movies, and hire who you want, and start getting people trained to move into these positions and have them like fill the space, if that makes any sense.
Find people you align with too. I know there are some people that I've worked with in the past where I'm like, I don't really like working with this person. And luckily it's been busy enough where I've been able to make these decisions and be like, I don't like the space that you're creating. I don't like, you know, the vibe that you're putting out. You know, I have worked with people who wanted to hire all female teams but for the wrong reasons.
Oh,
You know?
right.
But I've also worked with those people who want all female teams for the right reason, to give females, you know, an opportunity, or you know, hire visible minorities, just to give these people the opportunities that
Making
may not
space
have.
for them.
Yeah.
Making space for them. This is something that I've been focusing on for a long time now, and you know, everything relates back to yourself because it's all part of your experience, right? And so when I was out in Vancouver, I was obviously acting and auditioning once a week and booking some roles, but you know, all the roles that I was booking were pretty stereotypical. Asian gangster, Asian paramedic, Asian office worker. Why does it have to say Asian at the beginning of it? Why can't it just be an office worker? Anyways, and every diversity initiative that I had ever gone to, and they've been happening for years, and I have to, you know, say kudos to the industry for actually making things better, because I think it has gotten a lot better over the years. You know, definitely since I started my career, it's definitely gotten way, way, way better. And it's really just because, you know, they all say that if you want to see those stories on screen, you have to make them. You have to make them yourself. Nobody in Hollywood is going, like, no big, like, studio in Hollywood is going to tell your story for you, right? They'll tell the stories that they want to tell. I mean, and if they're being run by let's just say non-Asians, then it will be a non-Asian story, and it won't be necessarily genuine. But now there's so many creators out there of Asian background and telling Asian stories. Like I just watched. I have to give a shout out to Scarborough last night was fantastic. Our opening night film about 3 different families in a poor neighborhood in Scarborough. Fantastic film, just heartbreaking, but like also like hopeful and beautiful. I just love that there's other films that we're showing that are authentic to the Asian experience that we're showing for the festival. So obviously watch the films in the festival, but even like big budget films, it's getting to be or mainstream films, it's getting to be a lot more common, like Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know if you see this, but it's amazing. So yeah, just keep on taking space, I think. Keep on taking space, keep on working, and keep on pitching your amazing ideas and trying to get them made, because that's how we'll see more of it. The next question, let's see, what time is it? Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Olivia Lee says, how do you get into the union? Thanks for mentioning it before. Is it different for different departments? I'll start. I'll just say for ACTRA, essentially there's 2 ways to get into ACTRA. You can either start as a background actor and get 20 credits as a background actor, 20 days, I guess, on set within a year, and then you can join as a background actor performer. Or if you get, I think it's 2 or 3 ACTRA, like acting credits in a year, then you can join ACTRA as well. But anybody can pretty much get hired on set as an actor. But if they're not an ACTRA member, then they have to pay a permit fee, and that's typical for all the unions. If you get hired with and you're not a member, then you would just pay a permit fee. But anybody can still get hired. It just depends on the demand and if there's a member who's available and can do that same job, right?
They go through casting agencies?
Yeah, they would still go through casting.
So what's the question?
How do you get into the union, your particular union?
I would say it depends on where you are, because this is being broadcast all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in Winnipeg, there are 3 main film and television unions or guilds. That's the Directors Guild of Canada, IATSE 856, and then IATSE 669 for camera. But I know depending on what department you are, it's different for every province. So not everything, even though, for example,
there are similarities, but yes, some differences as well.
Like, for example, like DGC goes over all of Canada, but not every province covers the same departments. So, so art is actually DGC in Ontario. So I would suggest maybe, find out which department you're interested in, and just look online, like, especially because Google has helped me so much. And just look things up. I think almost all of these unions have their union agreements online, so you can look up the different rules, permit applications, because I'm a permit for 856 as well.
Oh.
So that information I found there. I think most of the forms to become a permit are also online, how the phone numbers to call, and stuff like that. And they do have contact lists on who to contact in the union for what. So.
For IATSE, you have to become a permittee first, which is like a $40 fee or something. And then once you're a permittee, you go on a permittee list. And so after the production asks every member that they already have, will start looking through the permittee list. So if you're lucky and they're really, 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 really desperate, they'll give you a call. More likely, you'll know somebody in the industry who will get you in, because IATSE is tricky. You need 40 days working in productions, at least 2 different bosses that you've had on 2 different productions over those 40 days. And that can be very tricky sometimes. If sometimes you'll do 2 shows and then be like a couple days shy. There's nothing you can really do about it.
But you still have to go through the union for that. Because if Jesse were to just hire whoever, but
Yes.
doesn't go through the union, those days don't count.
That's right, yeah. If I want to hire my buddy, I have to get them to become a permittee, and then I have to technically ask every single member that exists in that position in Winnipeg already before I can ask my friend permittee person. And then I still have to present that to the union, be like, is it allowed to hire this person? I swear I asked everybody. And that's why it's really good to try to join IATSE right now, because all the positions are so swamped. There's no questions of being asked right now about like who's being hired. So if you just become a permittee and say, I'm a permittee, that's literally the entry right now.
I would say it's kind of the same for DGC. The same process. There is a permit step of it. Depending on which province you're in, that step looks different. I know Ontario has the GAP program. I don't really know how BC works. Manitoba, we now have the MAP program, which will help you streamline the days that you get and give you extra training in the department that you're interested in. And we now have on the DGC website, like the members and then the people in the MAP program and then the permit list. So, yeah.
We just went through that on a show that we're doing now, and we had to go through the DGC. We had to go through the entire list, make sure that everyone was either unavailable or couldn't do it before we could actually get this person on the show. And then when I did it, I became a permittee, had to put in, I can't remember how many hours, and then I had to get, I believe it was a letter of recommendation from a full member in good standing. Then I had to go and do all the quizzes online.
Oh, yeah.
And maintain whatever score, don't fail, before I can actually become a DGC member, which it is completely worth it.
Yeah. And like you said, there are these courses that are requirements to apply. So for pretty much everyone, it's the SET orientation course if you're in Manitoba. The SET orientation course is through FTM. Actually, all these courses are through FTM. And then for IATSE, you also need to know WMIS.
Yeah, WMIS and the set etiquette. But pro tip, you need to complete it within like 6 months of applying. So you can apply tomorrow after your approval is good. You can just start working and not do those tests until later, until they come track you down, which is what happened to me.
I just downloaded all the tests and took all of the tests.
It's all online.
Yeah, you can get it in, I believe it's actually called a DGC bundle or something to that effect.
Yeah, and there's 6 courses for the DGC, and then SET orientation, I know they do in person as well, if you're more of an in-person person.
Yeah, the FTM has a bunch of online courses as well for etiquette. So just to wrap that up, I know that I saw a question on the screen before, but how do you know if you're going to like working in film? I think basically, as you've heard, you have to like taking tests. If you like taking tests, then you'll be okay with working in film because you're tested every day. Last question. I'm going to say last question. Javan Hardij, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. Besides knowing the software, what is the most important characteristic companies are looking for in an editor in the post-production environment? Another post-production question.
Right, learning the software is awesome. Like I said, Avid, I use Avid all the time. Premiere is also a great software program. And back to your question about which software, if you learn either or, those skills are totally transferable. I've actually done stuff in Premiere on some things and brought it into Avid just for the fact that since they work a little bit different, one has this advantage over the other. So if you learn both, you're going to be good. And adding both of them to your skill set is highly recommended.
You know, I almost liken learning software, like editing software, to learning an instrument. The more proficient you get at learning that software, the faster you are, the easier it is for you to be able to put things together. And it's kind of amazing, watching a really good editor work. It's like you're just so beyond. It's so beyond my skills, right? So
exactly. Learn guitar and you can play bass. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that for my sister.
It's true though.
Again, one of the things that I learned early on being an editor is that I was told that it is actually 90% personality, 10% technical skill. This was back in the day where I would sit in an edit suite with a client, producer, director, 8 or 10 hours. So if you're with someone that your personalities clash, it's gonna be not a lot of fun. But being able to deal with being able to bump heads and get the vision that you're both working to is a great asset. You know, and being able to troubleshoot at 2 o'clock in the morning when you can't get any tech support. If you're gonna get into it, learn just the basics, not just turning it off and back on again. But there's been times where it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's on a delivery when your software decides that it doesn't want to work anymore. And learning how to basically troubleshoot your software, and what I've learned over the last few years is getting a little bit more in depth in troubleshooting your OS. That will help you out as well. But there's always the creative side, but you need to learn a bit of the technical side just in case you're left high and dry until the next morning.
All right, thank you, George. So yeah, as you can see, like I'm sure you can probably discern, you know, post-production is maybe like you're not as much working with people, you're more working with technology. So if you're kind of if you're a technophile, that it might be your department. If you're more of a craftsperson or artist, that might be more the art department is your department. If you're like a people person and you like organizing things, if you're like mad organizational skills, then you might fit into the AD or production office department. Yeah, and if you're just a really fast talker, then maybe you can host panels and run film festivals. All right, but that's pretty much it for today. Did you have any last words for the beautiful people who are watching today?
Make as many movies as you can, have fun, find a team, and just go out and do it.
I'd say laugh off any troubles, because all day people are going to come up and be like, that looks terrible, do it again. And you just got to be like, okay, no problem.
My biggest piece of advice is that if someone comes up to you and gives you advice or criticism, don't take it as a bad thing. See it as this person sees potential in me and is giving up some of their time and some of their wisdom because they see this potential in me and want to see me succeed. We have seen so many people come and go in this industry that usually just by working with you within a week, they can tell, well, this person has what it takes, this person doesn't. And usually, like, I know I've sometimes not shared some wisdom because I'm like, well, it's gonna fall on deaf ears. I don't know if this is the right fit. But so if someone does pull you aside, give you advice, criticism, don't take it the wrong way.
Iron sharpens iron, and always learn and absorb like a sponge.
Oh yeah, and if you're well, I mean, if you're an actor, you definitely get used to rejection. Nothing is so precious that one rejection or one audition is gonna make or break you. So just keep on doing it. Like people will always, you'll hear so many no's in your life that it's just you just gotta bounce back from it. There's no, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all. Actually, you'll still be able to find a path for yourself. Anyways, thank you very much, everybody. I want to thank all of my panelists, George Ravala, Jesse Minky, Diane Kim. My name is Alan Wong. We have a couple more. We have way more amazing films and other events for the festival all happening all weekend long. I want to give a shout out to Film Training Manitoba for sponsoring this event. We have other obviously amazing sponsors and supporters of the festival. Check out the website, fascination.ca, to see the program and everything else that we've got going on. Thanks to Tommy for running the stream. Thanks to Jonathan back there for helping with the venue. And yeah, we'll see you next time, I guess. Bye.